Thank you, everyone. So I shall start the session just now. So a very warm good morning to everyone. So thank you for joining and thank you for showing your interest in learning more about CRISPR-Cas. So it's a deep pleasure to welcome all the participants, faculty members, and research scholars from different parts of the country. I am Dr. Meghna Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of Biotechnology at IMS Engineering College, Ghaziabad. In the coming days this week, starting from today, that is 14th of December to 18th of December, we'll be learning and grasping very new concepts of genome editing, mainly based on CRISPR-Cas9 system. The eminent and expert speakers would help us to understand various applications of CRISPR-Cas based genome editing in different organisms, disease conditions, and different situations. I would like to pay sincere thanks to AICTE for providing us this opportunity to gather here and update ourselves with the latest tools in genome engineering. The initiative taken by AICTE in form of Atal scheme that offers continuous learning opportunity to all us faculty members, research scholars in the AICTE approved institution from all over the country. The initiative is commendable and it ensures skill improvisation for AICTE affiliated teachers even in the challenging times like COVID. Also, post-COVID, we are continuing with this learning session. I would also like to thank and share some. I would also like to thank and share some glimpse of our host institution. So our host institution allowed and provided all the resources our director, sir, our management to conduct this faculty development program. So we are located at NH24 in Ghaziabad. We are a pioneering IICT approved engineering college, which is affiliated under APJ Abdul Kalam University, Lucknow. Besides conventional engineering programs, our college also offers a BTech in biotechnology as an undergraduate program. We are a NAC accredited and NBA accredited department. The Department of Biotechnology at IMS Engineering College is a research-oriented department with 15 faculty members and having expertise in different areas of biotechnology. We are led by our head of department, Professor Prabir Paul. So also we are a research-oriented department. And some of our major projects and in the niche areas of biotechnology are funded by government agencies like SERB and UP Pollution Control Board. I would now like to invite our Dean Academics, Professor S.N. Rajan, to address the participants and boost their confidence. Rajan, sir. Rajan, sir, you are on mute, sir.
Sorry. Thank you.
No, no problem. No problem.
Yeah.
So on
Sorry,
behalf of
please,
IMS
small
Engineering College,
technical issue. Yeah.
sorry. On behalf of IMS Engineering College, Ghaziabad, I extend warm welcome to all the participants and eminent speaker today of the event today, Professor M.B. Rajam, ex-professor, Department of Genetics, Delhi University, and Dr. Jitendra Giri, scientist, National Institute of Plant Genome Research. This 5-day FDP on genome editing and the tool CRISPR-Cas is starting today till 18th of December, will help faculty members to understand the whole technology and the exchange the knowledge about various aspects of genome editing, which is also called gene editing. As we all know, genome editing is a group of technology that gives scientists the ability to change the organism DNA. These technologies allow genetic materials to be added and removed or altered at particular location in the genome. Inspired with this biological science, the computational world has also developed evolutionary computing models, especially the genetic algorithm, to explore all the possible solutions space and get a best and the strongest solution of a particular problem. The CRISPR-Cas system, so far I could understand, because I am from computer science background, has generated a lot of excitement in the scientific community because it is faster, cheaper, more accurate, and more efficient than other existing genome editing methods. The main aim of the faculty development program is to enrich the knowledge of faculty members through interaction with eminent personalities from industries and academia. The knowledge sharing will improve the teaching learning process of the students and benefit the society. Thanks to Dr. Meghna Singh, the coordinator of this FDP program, for organizing such a wonderful event and inviting such eminent personalities for this program. A special thanks to Dr. Pradeep Kumar Paul, HOD Biotech Department, and all the fellow members of the department for organizing such a great event. I am sure it is going to be a successful and a wonderful event. Thanks and best wishes to all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Professor Rajan. So, Professor Rajan, as for new joinees, so he is our Dean Academics from our college, and so your motivating words means a lot to us. It means a lot for us to before we start and enter into this learning process. Now, I would like to request our head of department, Professor Paul, to say a few words about today's FDP and how it can be helpful for us. Professor Paul.
Thank you, Dr. Meghna. Good morning to all the esteemed experts, the participants, and many of whom are research scholars, for whom I think this would be a great opportunity to learn one of the latest tools in modern biology. I am Dr. Prabir Kumar Paul. By training, I am a botanist, but into molecular biology is the research field. Let me first thank AICT for initiating a great endeavor to promote excellence, academic excellence in technical institutions. The AICT Training and Learning Academy is one of the such initiatives that has been conducting various faculty development programs for imparting and upgrading faculty knowledge in emerging areas of the various disciplines of science and technology. Given the unprecedented COVID-19 backdrop, this year, 1,500 FDPs in various emerging areas have been scheduled in online mode, of which approximately 40 such FDPs are have commenced from 13th of December 2021. The FDPs are being conducted in various institutions, both like IITs, IIMs, NITs, JNU, BARC, DRDO, central universities, as well as colleges all over the country affiliated to AICT. This platform through the Atal Academy is enabling the young researchers, faculties to have an interface with the experts in the various fields to enrich the knowledge, which I believe would help in disseminating the latest in the field to the students to make better scientists for tomorrow. The ensuing in FDP from 14th to 18th, of which Dr. Meghna Singh is the coordinator, is on a topic which is relatively new, but extremely a powerful gene editing tool. Now, gene editing, as we all know, is the ability to make specific changes in the DNA sequence of living organisms, especially customizing its genetic makeup. Traditionally, gene editing has been done with enzymes, particular nucleases, that have been engineered to target a specific DNA sequence introduce cuts into the DNA strands, enabling removal of the existing DNA and insertion of the desired DNA fragment. However, today, a more powerful tool, namely CRISPR-Cas9 technology, developed not even a decade back in 2012, is making headlines in biotechnology research. The importance of this tool resulted in award of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry to Professor Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpenter on 7th October 2020. However, every landmark, every distinction has certain drawbacks. And I would just like to highlight possibly the Nobel Prize Committee missed out honoring a few others who had played a significant role in development of this gene editing tool. Many favor the CRISPR-Cas9 technique because of its high degree of flexibility, accuracy in cutting and pasting DNA. One of the reasons for its popularity is that it makes it possible to carry out genetic engineering on an unprecedented scale at a very low cost. However, it differs from the previous genetic engineering techniques is that it allows for introduction or removal of more than one gene at a time. This makes it possible to manipulate many different genes in a given cell line, plant or animal cell, reducing the process from taking a number of years to a matter of few weeks. It is also different that it is not only it is not species specific, so that so can be used on organisms previously not amenable to genetic engineering techniques. The technique is already being explored for a wide number of applications in the field, ranging from agriculture through to human health. In agriculture, it could help in designing new grains, roots, and fruits. Within the context of the human health, it could pave the way for the development of new treatments for rare metabolic disorders and genetic diseases ranging from hemophilia through to Hutchinson's disease. It is also being utilized in creation of transgenic animals to produce organs for transplant into human systems or human patients. The technology is also being investigated for gene therapy. Such therapy aims to insert normal genes into cells of people who suffer from genetic disorders such as cystic fibrosis, hemophilia, or Tay Sachs disease. Several startup companies have been founded to exploit the technique commercially, and large pharmaceutical companies are also exploring its use for drug discovery and development purposes. The significant leap in this gene editing tool has brought new urgency to the long-standing discussion about ethical and social implications surrounding genetic engineering of humans, to which many look forward to apply this tool. Many questions such as whether genetic engineering should be used to treat human diseases or alter traits such as beauty or intelligence has been asked in one form or the or another for decades. With the introduction of facile and efficient gene editing technologies, particularly CRISPR-Cas9, however, those questions were no longer theoretical, and the answers to them stood to be very real impacts of medicine and society. The eminent speakers in the ensuing FDP would deliberate upon a wide variety of aspects of this powerful gene editing tool. I'm sure each presentation would be a new learning in gene editing, encouraging wider applications of this tool for benefit of mankind within the boundaries of social ethics. I once again thank you everyone for joining this online FDP, as well as again thank the experts for agreeing to enlighten the participants on this new technology. I would like also to thank IMS Engineering, the management, the director, sir, as well as Dean Academics for helping us to organize this FDP on such a massive scale. I again thank Dr. Meghna Singh for taking the initiative to initiate a discussion on this important genetic tool. Thank you again, and again a warm welcome to this FTP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Paul. It is a great pleasure to always hear from you. So I must tell all the audiences that our head of department, Professor Paul, always brings some new angle to what we already know it. So discussing about what was the story behind the Nobel Prize when CRISPR-Cas, a Nobel Prize for CRISPR-Cas was given. So this was something very new that we never heard about. Thank you, sir, for motivating us. Thank you, sir, for always giving us a new direction to think. So starting off with this faculty development program on CRISPR-Cas based genome editing. So we have a very eminent speaker, expert speaker, Professor M.V. Rajam with us today. So Professor M.V. Rajam, I'll say little a brief about Professor M.V. Rajam. So though sir is a very big personality in plant genomic research, so whatever I say would be less to describe the achievements of Professor M.V. Rajam. So Professor Rajam retired as an esteemed professor of genetics at the University of Delhi South Campus, and he has over 3 decades of teaching and research experience. So Professor Rajam received his master's and PhD from Kakatiya University, Warangal, Telangana, and he did his postdoctoral research at Yale University, New Haven, Cornell, and after that he went to Cornell University, Ithaca, for his further postdoctoral research. Sir has made significant contribution in the field of plant biotechnology, polyamine physiology, and RNA interference technology. So he published almost over more than 200 research papers, book chapters, and reviews. Sir is a co-editor of many peer-reviewed journals, including Plant Biology and Biotechnology, which are published by Springer. Sir has guided almost 40 PhD students and many MPhil students and postdoctoral research fellows. So, Sir has also handled more than 30 major research projects which are funded by government. Uh, Professor Rajam has made several short visits to various countries, including France, Italy, Netherlands, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, under collaborative projects which are supported by European Union and Indo-French collaborations. And he has attended many conferences worldwide where Sir was able to impress other researchers with his great research. Professor Rajam is a fellow of 4 prestigious academies, the Indian National Science Academy, National Academy of Sciences, Indian Academy of Agricultural Sciences, and Telangana State Academy of Sciences. And he's a member of several learned scientific societies, including Plant Tissue Culture Association of India. Sir has also served as a member of editorial board and associate editor of many important international and national journals and a reviewer of lot many journals. Professor Rajam is a member of advisory and other committees of some universities and institutions in India and abroad. Professor Rajam has also received several honors and awards which have all the time again and again reminded us of having a great researcher who has given us many new insights in field of plant biotechnology. So I warmly welcome Professor Rajam and request him to say a few words about today's faculty development program.
Thank you, Dr. Meghna. First of all, actually, I'm having some problem with my laptop. I've sent my PPT presentation and also PDF file of my talk to your email. So can you, on my behalf, can you please operate? Huh?
I'll present.
You can share on my behalf.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dr. Meghna, she has initiated this a very important event. And as you all know, genome editing has really revolutionized the whole biology field globally because of its potential applications. You can create desired mutations, insertions, or using gene editing tools, particularly CRISPR-Cas system. And there are so many applications, not only in agriculture, but also in medical field and industry. This important too. I won't be, of course, I mentioned to Dr. Meghana, I do have one project on CRISPR against papaya papaya virus and papaya leaf spot virus in papaya, and I'm only co-PI. Dr. Patil from Indian Institute of Horticulture Research, Bangalore, is the coordinator. So we are able to finish this project, and we have already got some encouraging results. So of course, I've been working in RNA interference since long time, about more than 15 years. My lab is one of the first labs to initiate two major programs supported by DBT on RNAi mediated resistance against fungal pathogens, viruses, insect pests. So today, of course, I shall be talking about RNAi and crop protection against the pathogens and insect pests, including the most latest technology, that is artificial microRNA technology for engineering insect resistance in tomato. I think with this, I request Dr. Meghana to share my PPT presentation. Actually, I was trying to download Google Meet app. So I think we're having some trouble with actually now.
No issue, sir. So all the participants, I will be starting the presentation of Professor Rajam, and will be seeing that how we can use genome editing technique to learn what all changes are there in the occurring in the plant, and how it is applicable to other plants also. So I'll share my screen right now.
Yeah, please.
Here. So is it visible, sir?
Not it. Yeah, I think
Yeah, it takes some time, sir.
So, slideshow, please.
Yeah.
Is this slideshow?
So I'll move it to slideshow mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it visible now?
Okay. Yeah, it is. Yeah, thank you.
So okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let me start.
Yes.
I shall be talking about the RNAi as it for crop protection against fungal and viral pathogens and insect pests. If you see the difference between RNA interference, RNA interference can be used for knocking down the gene, whereas gene editing, you can only knock out the gene expression. So this RNA has this advantage because in certain instances, knock down has an important application rather than knock. So, but gene editing, of course, it has its own importance because after it can lead to even absence of transgene in the subsequent segregating population. So in some countries like US and a few other countries, the gene-edited plants are treated as non-transgenic plants. Of course, in India, we still treat them as genetically modified plants. So that is the added advantage of genome editing tool as compared to RNAi. So each of these techniques have their own importance. So let me. Something has gone wrong. Yeah, okay. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, okay. So the RNA interference was discovered in 1998. It's about 20 years now. But since then, it has witnessed potential applications in various fields, including agriculture. In fact, this field also has, people, scientists, of RNA interference is second breakthrough after the discovery of DNA structure by, Watson Crick, because of its potential applications. So globally, many of the labs globally, they use RNA interference or RNA silencing either for functional genomic studies to decipher the function of newly isolated genes or for practical applications. Next, please. So just a second. Yeah. Yeah. So until recently, scientists believed that, I think my, just a bit. Just a second. Yeah. So until recently, scientists believed that the genetic material DNA is the most important molecule because, it has in all the genetic information. And RNA, people thought that RNA is only an intermediate molecule, which would translate the genetic information present in the DNA into protein. But in the recent past, thousands of non-coding RNAs have been discovered in various organisms, right from viruses to humans. And now we know, among non-coding, we have traditional RNA, nuclear, well known. Recent discovery of small interfering and many other RNAs like tosi RNAs, etc. Or now we know that these small RNAs or non-coding RNAs, particularly the microRNAs and sRNAs, they regulate a variety of biological processes, almost all important biological processes, including the regulation of gene expression, chromosome remodeling, and the regulation of developmental processes, stress responses, signaling. All these biological processes are being regulated by small RNAs like microRNAs. So because of importance of non-coding RNAs, now the RNA is categorized into two groups, messenger RNA biology, RNA biology. Yes. Next, please. So I shall be talking about the role of microRNAs in crop protection. RNA is first discovered in plants. Now, that time he was working with Monsanto group. They wanted to develop a deep purple petunia by overexpressing a key gene involved in pigment biosynthesis, that is chalcone synthase gene, CHS. So, therefore, they are overexpressed. Remember, chalcone synthase gene is also in petunia. So, in addition, they are overexpressed the chalcone synthase gene in petunia, and they expected surprising results. Instead of getting deep purple flower, they've got either completely white flowers or the chimeric flowers I shown in the slide. And then when they've checked the transcripts, from RNA isolated from normal flower, purple flower, and white flowers, and to their surprise, they could not detect any transcripts from the RNA isolated from white flowers. Chalcone synthase gene as well as transcripts of the introduced chalcone synthase, they could not find any transcript. So based on this observation, they said they said this is due to introduced chalcone synthase gene and its homologue present in the petunia, and they have named this phenomena as co-suppression. And now we know this co-suppression is nothing but post-transcription gene silence, which is only as Dr. Jorgensen, probably they could have got Nobel Prize. He would have got Nobel Prize if they if their group deciphered the mechanism of gene silencing. And this work was published in France Cell in 1990. Next, please. Yeah, let me tell you, the Craig Mello and Andrew Foy, their working hypothesis is very, very. I'm always, fascinated with their working hypothesis. Prior to their work, some other colleagues, they wanted to study the function of PAR1 gene in the polarity of C. elegans embryo. And for studying this, they had used antisense RNA technology for knocking down the expression of PAR1. So along with the antisense RNA, they have used the sense RNA as a control. And when they imbibed the C. elegans worms in sense RNA, antisense RNA against PAR1 gene, and again unexpectedly, they could get a very beautiful mutant phenotype with both antisense RNA and sense RNA. Theoretically, we don't expect gene suppression of gene expression by sense RNA, because of same sequence. And this mystery remained. They could not understand, why this happened, and this mystery remained for a few years until the Andrew Foy and Craig Mello, they have, they whatever I told us now. So what they thought was the mutant phenotype due to sense RNA could be a mechanical contamination of sense and both antisense, and then therefore they have highly purified sense RNA, antisense RNA, and they have also mixed sense and antisense to get a double-strand RNA. So all these three, sense, antisense, were used to test their effect on gene silencing. So they have considered about 20 genes for silencing experiments. And, as expected, they could not see any mutation. So what they have imbibed, again, C. elegans worms in the sense RNA, antisense RNA, and double-strand RNA, and sense and antisense both. And they could not see a good mutant phenotype with sense, and also antisense RNA. Probably the extent of gene suppression was low with antisense, so that may be the reason they could not see any mutant phenotype. But the C. elegans worms imbibed or incubated in double-strand RNA against a particular target gene, they could see 100% gene knockdown, almost 100%, or 90 to 90%, and a very nice mutant phenotype. So based on this observation, they said actually double-strand RNA is the triggering mechanism for gene silencing, right? And they named this phenomena as a genetic interference, or now of course RNA interference or interfering RNA. And they have also observed that the RNA silencing signal can be systemically moved from cell to cell or tissue to tissue, and RNA silencing signal can even pass on to next generations, next couple of generations or so. So these were three important major observations of their work, which was published in Nature in 1990. In this span of 8 years, they could get a Nobel Prize in physiology and medicine in 2006. And next, double-strand RNA. Next, please. And of course, now we know that RNA interference mechanism is highly conserved across eukaryotic systems. In fact, it is an ancient innate immunity mechanism against viral infection in animals, humans, and plants. The virus, or when plants are infected with the virus, it induces RNA part of the host system, and the host plant produces siRNAs against all viral genes, and that is how the viral multiplication is. But the viruses, they also have, they are much more smarter than us, which encode for RNAi suppressor proteins. And these RNA suppressor proteins, they interfere with the host, and actually the RNA suppressor protein genes, they hijack the host RNAi. As a result, the infection. So after the publication of Andrew Fire and Craig Mello, the very next year or after a couple of years, Dr. Balakambe, he has done very pioneering work in RNAi. They are the one who demonstrated that small antisense RNAs, they are actually involved in post-transcription gene silencing. I mean, they demonstrated that the small antisense RNA are nothing but small interfering RNA. They are the effector molecules in gene silencing mediated by double-strand RNA. As you can see, they could detect about 24 or 25 nucleotide small RNAs, which are actually the effector molecules for gene silencing. Next, please. Yeah. So there are two important pathways: siRNA-mediated gene silencing or microRNA gene-mediated gene silencing. And these, gene silencing can occur either at transcription level. It is called transcriptional gene silencing, or it can occur after transcription. It's called post-transcriptional gene silencing, or PTGS. Next. Next slide. Yeah. So the RNAi of any eukaryotic system is triggered by presence of double-strand RNA, right? And how double-strand RNA is formed in eukaryotic cells? So it can be formed by a variety of means, like aberrant structures can also lead to double-strand RNA formation, or read-through transcription or transcription of pseudogenes, multiples, or transcription of or viral infections or introduced transgenes, foreign genes. All this can lead to formation of double-strand RNA. So once double-strand RNA is present in the eukaryotic cell, it immediately triggers or induces RNAi of the organism. So then the double-strand RNA is readily cleaved by RNase H3 family enzyme endonuclease to about 21 nucleotide size small interfering RNAs or small siRNAs. Right? The siRNAs, they have two important features. They have 3' 2 nucleotide overhangs and phosphate group at 5'. These are two important characteristic features of siRNA molecules. So now the siRNA molecules, they are in a multi-protein complex called RISC, RNA-induced gene silencing complex. The arginate protein, which again belongs to RNase 3 family enzymes. Now, the activated degrades the antisense strand of siRNA, and only the sense strand, which is also called guide strand, is retained with the RISC complex. Now, this activated RISC complex, along with the guide strand of siRNA, can recognize the cognate messenger RNA or target messenger RNA, and the arginate protein, it slices the target messenger RNA into two unequal halves. The initial, of course, the guide strand or antisense strand of siRNA, because of its complementary sequence, it recognizes and binds with the target messenger RNA, and arginate protein, it has a slicing activity. It degrades or cleaves the target messenger RNA into two unequal halves. And so that is how we see gene silencing after transcription or at post-transcription level, and as a result, there won't be any protein. There are two important phenomena associated with RNA pathway. These siRNA molecules can be systematically either through plasmid or in case of plants as well as other organisms, they can be given double-strand RNA. They can move from one cell to other through a pilus formed due to SID proteins, membrane-bound seed proteins as shown in the figure, right? So that is how the RNA signal can move from one cell to other. And the other thing, the get amplified to form secondary siRNA molecules. After the cleavage of the target messenger RNA into two unequal halves, the bigger fragment of messenger RNA polymerization in the presence of RDRP, RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, and the dissociated small interfering RNA, they act as a for polymerization. So that is how, and which is cleaved by dicer to form secondary siRNA. So that is how we see amplification of RNA silencing molecules. And this is seen in case of plants, fungi, and nematodes. But RDRP, of course, is absent in insects and humans. So probably, and so far, it is not discovered in insects and humans. Next, please. So that was the mechanism of gene silencing by RNAi. And for silencing any target gene, you can prepare the hairpin RNAi constructs. These are called RNA silencing constructs. These can be prepared by three different ways, but the most common one is the hairpin RNA constructs, where we clone the partial sequence of the target gene in sense orientation, as shown here, with the red color arrow and red color. So we clone partial sequence of the target gene in sense orientation as well as antisense orientation with a small intron, functional small intron as a spaced DNA between them under the control of an appropriate promoter, right? Like here, of course, I've shown only single promoter which should drive the expression of RNA cassette, and you have, of course, poly A signal. So if you introduce this kind of hairpin RNA construct into plants, so after transcription, you get a long double-strand RNA with a small hairpin. The long double-strand RNA is formed because of the binding of sense messenger RNA and antisense messenger RNA because of complementary nature. But the intron, not having any complementary sequence, it will form a small hairpin. Right? So then, of course, once the double-strand RNA with a hairpin is formed, it triggers or induces RNA pathway in the host organism. So these kind of constructs are very, very, very commonly used because they are very efficient in silencing the target gene. Next, please. Yeah, alternatively, you can clone the partial sequence of the target gene only in single orientation, the second diagram. But this sequence is flanked by two promoters, right? So after transcription, of course, you get the sense and antisense messenger RNA, which form, after binding, which form double-strand RNA, but without hairpin. So in the literature, of course, it was shown that double-strand RNA with the hairpin is much more efficient as compared to just double-strand RNA without hairpin for silencing of the target gene. Yeah. So I think people prefer the first strategy for preparing hairpin RNA constructs. And for transient gene silencing, either you can go for chemically synthesized siRNA. You can design a single siRNA or multiple siRNAs, which can be chemically synthesized, or long double-strand RNA. And these can be used for transient gene silencing. You can silence the target gene for a few days or few weeks, right? But if the constructs, hairpin RNA construct, it can be used for stable silencing of the target gene by development of genetically modified plants or transient plants. Next, please. You can okay. So now, beyond doubt, it has been shown that RNAi is a very potential tool for studying gene function, right, in functional genomic studies. This is the fundamental application of RNAi. But besides, RNAi has already emerged as a novel alternative and proved to be very potential for engineering croplands for resistance against pathogens and pests, including insect pests and nematodes, and also the improvement of many other agronomical important characters. It can be increase of yield or enhancement of oil quality. Well, and as a matter of fact, the conventional transgenic approaches, right, are being used for crop improvement program overexpress a gene. A transgene is overexpressed. But here is the technology, RNAi, where we downregulate the target gene. And by doing so, we can achieve the improvement of all agronomical important traits, like in case of conventional transgenic approaches. And here, for crop protection, what is important is the identification of a novel target for RNAi. See, if you want to control a pathogen, like fungal pathogen or viral virus, or insect pest or nematode, you have to identify a gene whose product is absolutely important for the growth and development of that either pathogen or pest, right? I'll give you one example. Chitin synthase, for example. Chitin synthase is involved in synthesis of chitin molecule, and the chitin molecules are absolutely important for not only for insect growth and development or molting, but also important for fungal growth and development, because chitin has an important molecule of cell wall in both the cases. So if you knock down expression of chitin synthase in the fungal pathogen or insect pest, obviously it will lead to mortality in insect pest or lethality in case of fungal pathogen. So this is a novel target gene, right, for RNAi. Likewise, you can identify any such novel target genes, either in the pathogen or insect pest. The ideal target gene is the that gene should only present in the pathogen or pest, should be absent in the host plant, and also in all beneficial organisms and of course, animals and humans. So one should try to identify a target gene which is only present in the target pathogen or pest, right? So now, of course, because of availability of genome sequencing projects, the identification of such targets is not a problem. Well, but when we initiated this kind of work about 15 years ago, we had very uh, few choices for identification of target gene, right? So now we know that is not a problem. Next, please. Yeah. Here I've shown the RNA concept for the control of an insect pest. Okay. So this is called Higgs gene silencing or host-induced RNA interference, HIRNAI. There are many other terminology like host-delivered RNAi, right? But I prefer to call it as a Higgs host-induced gene silencing. So as I just said, the identification of target gene is absolutely important, which is a prerequisite. So after having identified a target gene in the target insect pest, let's say chitin synthase, we prepare hairpin RNA construct with the partial sequence of insect chitin synthase gene, and then we transform the plant by agrobacterial transmission or particle gun using hairpin gene construct, and we expect that the transgenic lines of RNAi, they express double-strand RNA and subsequently siRNA molecules against the insect gene. So when such RNA lines, RNA transgenic lines are infested with the insect larvae, so insect larvae, they eat the plant parts, right? And following the digestion of plant part in the insect gut, the double-strand RNA or siRNA molecules are available. If the siRNA molecules are available, they can be directly recruited in the insect risk complex, and then this complex can identify the target insect gene, chitin synthase, and of course it degrades or silences the gene. If double-stranded RNAs are present in the insect gut, initially they are cleaved into siRNA molecules by insect dicer enzyme, and then after formation of siRNA molecules, they can silence with the help of silence the target gene with the help of RISC complex. It is very interesting, you are silencing an insect gene, right, through plant-mediated RNAi, right? So that is the reason it's called host-induced gene silencing, Higgs or host-induced RNA interference. And another interesting is entry of double-strand RNA siRNA molecules in the insect gut. The insect, it cannot differentiate whether siRNA molecules of its own or coming from outside. So using its own RNA machinery, its own gene target gene gets silenced. So I've given only one example, chitin synthase, but you can, we have identified many, more than half a dozen targets like chitinase, and receptor gene, etc. Next, please. Next slide. Yeah. In 2007, two papers were appeared in Nature Biotechnology. The first one by Chinese, I think. So they have identified P450 monoxynase gene as a target gene. And this is from Helicoverpa armigera. As you know, Helicoverpa armigera, which is commonly known as cotton bollworm, a very notorious insect pest, very difficult to control because it's a polyphagous. It can eat more than it can. It can affect more than 50 important crop plants, including cotton, tomato, chickpea, red gram, etc. And here, cotton, for example, cotton leaves, they contain a toxic substance called gossypol. Gossypol has insecticidal property, right? But the Helicoverpa, it can still eat the cotton leaves because it has this enzyme, 450 monoxynase enzyme, which can degrade, which can detoxify the gossypol. So as a result, insect can still eat cotton leaves and it can survive. So, and here, it's so beautiful, they have identified P450 monoxynase as a target for knockdown. So they have used RNAi to knock down P450 monoxynase of the insect, Helicoverpa. And after the knockdown, the insect can no longer tolerate gossypol because of downregulation of this gene and its products. So, in my opinion, this is a novel target, right? In the second case, of course, they have identified vacuolar ATPase gene to control rootworm in case of maize, and this was done by Monsanto company. So, in both the cases, they have reported a very, very effective control of target insect pest by RNA approach. Next, please. Yeah, they have targeted vacuolar ATPase in rootworm of maize, and you can see yourself the RNA line where the root system is almost completely protected, but the non-GM corn, the root system is quite damaged. Next, please. Same strategy. Yeah, so this work was done by Monsanto, and recently they could even pyramid the RNA line, the BT maize, and they've seen more efficient control of rootworm, right, in gene pyramided maize. Next, please. Yeah. So the same strategy was applied for the control of nematode in transient tobacco and then and other crops. This work was done by an Indian scientist, Professor Subramanian from IIT Kanpur. Now he is in at IIT Madras, I think, in collaboration with Professor Velupambu from Madurai Commerce University. And then there's another work, right, from US. Both the groups, they've demonstrated very effective control of nematode Melanogyne incognita by targeting novel genes by RNAi. Next, please. Yeah. So recently, Dr. Rathod, Texas, they wanted to develop a cotton a very low or no. The cotton seed is highly rich in protein. About 42% of the cotton seed is protein. But unfortunately, cotton seed cannot be consumed, cannot be used for human consumption because of the presence of gossypol, the toxic substance. And so that is the reason, they wanted to get rid of Gossamer by RNA approach by knocking down a key gene involved. So after knocking down kinase gene in RNA lines of cotton, they have identified two lines which have shown no or very negligible amount of gossypol. In fact, the seeds from these RNA lines, they smell like canola oil. So now the seeds from these RNA lines can be consumed for human consumption. Right. Next, please. So there are more recently. Next, please. Yeah. The two companies, they have even created Blue Rose by the package of RNA approach, and you know, uh, they have dreamt since last more than 180 years to develop blue roses, but they fail because of simple reason. Blue pigment is absent in roses, and here, initially before this, of course, Brandon couples was also used to develop blue rose by expressing a blue gene from other ornamental plants. But more recently, the RNA approach was also used to develop blue rose, and blue roses have already been commercialized in some countries. Next, please. There are n number of applications of RNAi, right? You name anything which can be like development of fungal resistant plants, virus resistant plants, enhancement of nutrient quality or oil quality, even decaffeinated coffee, nicotine-free tobacco, etc. Right? And there could be many exciting applications in the coming future. Next, please. With this, yeah. And the latest development in RNA field is environmental RNAi, eRNAi, and this approach is GMO, genetically modified organism free approach. We don't develop any transgenic plants, right? No genetic transmission at all. And here we use the double-strand RNA exogenously. In other words, we spray double-strand RNA onto the leaves of the plant or onto the bowl there. For the control of insect pests, viruses, even fungal pathogens or nematodes, mites, etc. So that means this is called as a spray invisible gene silencing. 6 against Higgs, post-single silencing. In fact, double-strand RNA are regarded as pesticides of new generation for crop protection, right? And if you spray double-strand RNA, generally it undergoes degradation by nucleases. So therefore, people are using nanoparticles, biopolymers or nanoparticles or carrier compounds, right? So that double-strand RNA is protected from nucleases. It can remain for some time on the leaves. Alternatively, people also used E. coli, a particular strain of E. coli called HT115 to express double-strand RNA against an insect gene or a virus gene or a fungal pathogen gene. So you can just spray E. coli expression double-strand RNA against a target gene. So this is also a very good approach. And so this is very effectively used for the control of viruses, virides, bacterial pathogen, fungal pathogen, even nematodes and mites, right? The only problem is this, it remains a short period protection. This has, a short period of a protection window of 5 to 10 days against viruses, bacteria, etc. So that means, you have to periodically spray nanoparticle encapsulated double-strand RNA or E. coli expressing double-strand RNA. Next, please. This slide, of course, I have shown how double-strand RNA is delivered. You can directly spray double-strand RNA, or you can inject double-strand RNA into trunk, right? Or through irrigation or through soil, right? But the most effective, in my opinion, the most effective double-strand delivery is the spray, right? Next, please. Even seeds, you can also coat the seed with the double-strand RNA for the control of seed pathogens and insect pests. And after the double-strand spray, right? people have demonstrated whether double-strand RNA spray can be uptaken and then translocated, within the plant body. So I think the most of the studies have shown the uptake of double-strand RNA and its spread, in the plants, right? So generally via stomato. The uptake is via stomato. Next, please. Yeah. Only this has one limitation, one has to go for metric ton levels of double-strand RNA that is required for the field scale control of insect pests or pathogens. It's a very huge quantity and it may not be cost effective. The rough estimation suggests that 10 grams of double-strand RNA per hectare is required. 10 grams of RNA is a huge quantity actually. So synthesis of such a huge quantity of double-strand RNA is a real challenge, right? It can be, there are important. There are three ways of preparation of double-strand RNA: chemical synthesis or in vitro transcription, E. coli expressing double-strand RNA. So these, I think, the right, because E. coli can be grown in fermenters in huge quantity. Next, please. Next slide. Yeah. This is, of course, comparison between transmissive, that is through genetic transmission, and non-transmissive, which is a double-strand RNA spray. They have considered several parameters. For example, developmental cost. The transmissive is high, like here, of course, they say low, but I don't think, since you have to prepare double-strand RNA in a huge quantity, it may not be cost effective. Then the delivery of sRNA is continuous in case of transmissive, because we have developed a stable genetically modified plant which can express double-strand RNA continuously. But in non-transmissive or double-strand RNA spray, it is transient. So I think similarly, they have considered few more parameters. Next, please. Next. So there are several successful examples, and here I've shown control of an important fungal pathogen, Fusarium graminearum, on the leaves sprayed with double-strand RNA in case of wheat. So this is a very important disease, fungal disease in wheat and few other cereals. You can see yourself the top panel, the plant's leaves sprayed with double-strand RNA against a target gene, a particular target gene, and is almost, the symptoms are almost negligible as compared to mark control or GFP control. And they have also shown the significant decrease in the target gene transcripts right after the double-strand RNA spray against a particular gene. Next, please. Yeah, I think I've given you a very broad introduction about RNA application, RNA biology, the mechanism of gene silencing, and patent application in agriculture. I'll take a few more minutes to. I think it's 11:15. I still have time, isn't it? Yeah. So I'll take a few minutes to give you an overview of my own lab work. We had, as I said before, about 15 years ago, I had two major projects, and after that, of course, I have handled more than a dozen projects on RNAi for crop improvement program, or not. Apart from crop protection against fungal pathogen, viruses, and insect pests. So, as you know, the tomato is badly affected by a fungal pathogen, that is Fusarium oxysporum, which causes Fusarium wilt disease. It's a major disease, fungal disease in tomato. Similarly, the tomato fruits are also badly affected by Helicoverpa armigera, which is called fruit worm. Right, you can see the pictures. And both fungal pathogen as well as insect pests, of course, they cause a very significant crop loss in tomato. So therefore, we have decided to develop tomato resistance pests. Next, please. Next slide. So there are several conventional approaches and also transgenic approaches. Each one of these have their own limitation. I don't want to get into details because of paucity of time. For instance, the farmers most extensively use very toxic agrochemicals, pesticides, right? They don't have any particular mechanism. They're highly toxic for the control of pathogen insect pests. And they also cause very harmful effects for the environment and health problems for humans. So since RNA interference approach does not involve any protein, any transient protein, because you are silencing the target gene at post-transcription level, there is no protein. Unlike BT approach for insect resistance, you have a BT protein, right? So in the options of transient protein in RNA approach, it has several advantages. I'll discuss it later at the end. So here, of course, we have used two strategies: siRNA mediated and microRNA mediated silencing of target genes in pathogen or pest. Next, please. I'll briefly discuss, just the overview. Yeah. So this is like I've already explained, the RNA strategy for insect control. Exactly the same approach can be extended for not only for control of fungal pathogens, but also nematodes, right? So here, we have identified ornithine decarboxylase as an important target for RNAi because of a couple of reasons. Ornithine decarboxylase is an important key gene involved in polyamine biosynthesis, right? And polyamines are absolutely important for normal growth and development. So obviously, if you knock down the expression of ODC in fungi, it can lead to lethality, right? It will affect the growth and development of the fungal pathogen. So with that idea in mind, as a proof of concept, because I've done very significant work on ODC in US at Yale University. So therefore, I've decided to target ODC in fungal pathogen, Fusarium oxysporum. So we have prepared. So next step is the preparation of hairpin construct with the partial sequence of fungal ODC gene, and then tomato transmission with the hairpin gene construct. The transgenic RNA lines of tomato, they express double-strand RNA and siRNAs against fungal gene ODC. When such plants, these RNA lines are affected by the target fungal pathogen, that is Fusarium oxysporum, the siRNAs, which are continuously synthesized in transgenic tomato plant, might enter into the invaded fungal cells and then then silence the target ODC gene in fungal cells. And as a result, the final outcome would be fungal resistant tomato plants. So this was, when we started this work in 2004 or 2005, this was purely an hypothesis. There were no publications at all on fungal pathogens as an insect pest. Next, please. So we have expressed double-strand RNA against Fusarium oxysporum ODC gene in transgenic tomato for fungal resistance. Next, please. Yeah. So initially we have retrieved ODC sequence from NCBI database, and this gene sequence was subjected for blast search to identify a region, a small region of about 500 or 600 base pair, which has very negligible similarity or homology with the ODC gene in the host plant tomato and ODC gene from humans, animals, and other beneficial organisms. So we have identified about 650, I believe, 565, I believe, such a region, which is again subjected which is divided into 21 nucleotides, because this long sequence will produce multiple siRNAs after, right, after introducing it to the plant. So therefore, this 565 long sequence is divided into 21 nucleotide base, or 21 base pair, and each of these 21 base pair fragment was also blasted against the blast search to rule out any off-target effects. The only problem with RNAi, the siRNA immediately, is you have to select a sequence, partial sequence of target gene, which should have negligible homology with any of the genes, right? Otherwise, if it has a good homology, then we end up, silencing unintended genes, which is called off-target effects. So here we have identified 565 or base pair sequence, which is free from off-target effects. So therefore, we have also checked the stability, double-strand RNA stability of the sequence, and then we have finally, next please. Yeah. So then we have cloned the 560. I can't see, because I'm using mobile. 560 or 565 base pair ODC, fungal ODC gene. Then this sequence was used to develop hairpin construct, and hairpin RNA construct was used to develop more than 60 tomato transplants. Initially, the transplants were screened by PCR using primer specific to the marker gene NPT2, canvas resistant gene, and ODC. then we could get more than 70% positives. We said positives. Next, please. And more importantly, we have also checked the expression of intended siRNAs in transgenic tomato lines. And as you can see, most of the transgenic tomato lines have shown a very good titer or expression of siRNAs. Then we picked up some of the most important promising lines having a good titer of siRNAs for testing resistance against the Fusarium oxysporum or Fusarium wilt. So on your right panel, what we have done, we have uh, we have imbibed or incubated the root system of control seedlings and the seedlings of RNA line, different RNA lines in Fusarium oxysporum spore suspension for about 20 minutes. And then we have established control and RNA and seedlings in pot condition. And then we monitor disease progression, the wilt symptoms, up to 3 weeks. And as expected in control, of course, we could see a typical wilting symptoms after a couple of weeks. But RNA lines have shown a very high resistance to moderate resistance, depending on the expression of siRNA molecules. We could even correlate the extent of resistance with the expression of the siRNA molecules. Next, please. Yeah. So, that work was already published in plant molecular biology reports. Then we have used RNA approach for the control of Helicobacter in tomato. And here we have identified chitinase as a target gene. Next, please. So the same approach, initially, we have done all those in silico analysis of retrieved chitinase sequence, and we found a very small portion which is free from off-target effect, and then we have used that partial sequence for the development of terpene construct. And this construct also has NPT, cannabis resistant gene, as a translation marker. Then we have developed several tomato transmins. Next, please. We have done so we have done southern analysis for showing the copy number of the transgene, and then we have modified northern hybridization to detect the expression of intended siRNA molecules of 21 nucleotide sites. Next, then some of the promising lines were tested for insect bioassays. We have considered some parameters like insect mortality, the effect on insect growth and development, including molting, right, and morphology. So as you can see here, the second installed larvae of Helicobacter armigera fed with RNAi leaves of tomato, they have shown 60 to 70% insect mortality, right, as compared to the control. Next, please. So that was significant. And then again, the larvae fed with RNA leaves have shown a lot of effects on growth and development. We have seen decrease in larval weight, larval length, and there was also a developmental delay by 5 to 6 days in the larvae fed with the normal control leaves. They have already entered in pupa stage, but the larvae fed with RNA leaves, they are still in 4th or 5th instar. So there was a developmental time delay by 5 to 6 days. Next, please. So this feeding has also led to decrease in pupal weight, even some abnormalities at pupae, like distorted pupae, etc. Next, please. And also resulted in the feeding, also resulted in abnormal adults, like distorted wings, etc. And more importantly, the feeding has led to reduction in fecundicity. Egg laying was also affected. Egg hatching was also affected. So then we wanted to see whether all these effects are really due to reduction in the target gene transcript. So next, we have next slide. So we have checked the target gene, that is chitinase transcript, by quantitative PCR, and we found that there was 2 to 6-fold decrease in target gene transcript in different RNA lines. So this gene on insect growth and development with this plant molecular biology in 2016. Next, please. And then we have more recently we have used artificial microRNA technology used for effective gene silencing. Before I talk about artificial microRNA, let me give you a very brief information about microRNAs. MicroRNAs are also non-coding, a kind of non-coding RNAs of 22, 21 nucleotide size. In fact, every organism has, tens of, even more than 1,000 microRNAs, which are involved in the regulation of gene expression and many other biological processes, including development, signaling, response to stresses, biotic and abiotic. And the unlike siRNAs, which are formed from the same target gene, but the microRNAs you have microRNA genes, right? So the microRNA genes are transcribed by mostly polymerase II, RNA polymerase II, to produce primary microRNA, which is about 200 to 700 base pair, and it has typically a stem loop. And this primary microRNA is processed by dicer, right, to produce precursor microRNA, which is about 70 base pair size, and this also has a typical stem loop structure. The dicer the duplex microRNA, you have microRNA and microRNA start, and now the duplex microRNA is exported to cytoplasm by export, and then the microRNA duplex is recruited in RISC complex, where the guide strand of microRNA duplex is retained, and passenger strand of microRNA duplex is selectively degrades, right? Selectively get degrades, and now the RISC complex, activated RISC complex, along with the RNA, and suppresses its expression either through cleavage or translation blockage. So this, when the mature microRNA, single-stranded mature microRNA, when it has 100% complementarity with its target sequence present in the messenger RNA, then the target messenger RNA is cleaved. When the messenger RNA, the mature microRNA has one or two mismatches, then it leads to translation blockage. So that is the reason, behind. Interestingly, in most cases, mature microRNA region, and I've shown, right, this seed region of spheroid, and that is highly conserved and mismatches, but this mostly binds with its complementary sequence present in 3' untransferred region. Next, please. Then what are artificial microRNAs? The are derived by replacing native microRNA duplex precursor. Like here, let us say, I've considered Thaliana. This is precursor microRNA of 319, and duplex. This is about, so for design of precursor sequence of urine thread. Chances, of course, so now it will become an artificial microRNA. And interestingly, an artificial microRNA can undergo similar process like in case of microRNA, which is then involved in the silencing of the target gene. And this, of course, for the design of artificial software called tree, and this uses certain criteria like artificial microRNA always should start with A, and there are a few other 3 or 4 important criteria for designing an effective artificial microRNA. It is very simple. You have to feed the sequence, the target gene sequence, in the software, and this will give you some potential artificial microRNAs. And among those, you can choose the one best, which fulfills all the criteria, right? So after doing all this exercise, next please. Yeah. So we have used this for knocking down the expression of another important target of the insect, that is ecdosine receptor gene of Helicoverpa parmigiana, for the development of tomato lines, artificial microRNA lines for insect products. Next, please. So what we've done was, yeah, I'm almost through. A few more slides. Yeah. So initially, we have retrieved the sequence of Helicoverpa parmigiana ecdosine receptor gene from NCBI. Then we subjected this sequence in WMD3 software, and this has provided us or generated some potential artificial microRNAs of 21 nucleotide base pair. Then we have chosen the one best, which has minimal homology and which can form a stable structure, right? Stable microRNA structure. Next, please. Next. Yeah, you can see yourself on the left-hand side. So this is the structure with microRNA duplex region. And this microRNA duplex region is replaced with the insect ecdosine receptor of 21 nucleotide. And you can see the structure, and we have even retained the one of the matches present in the nature precursor microRNA, right, while designing artificial microRNA. Next, please. So this was custom synthesized. Next, please. So that art having the synthesized, and initially it is cloned in PRT1001 downstream to a constitutive promoter, 35 promoter, and this is a full determination. And then we fished out the whole cassette, the artificial microRNA along with the promoter and terminator, and then clone in plant transmission vector, binary vector, that is PKMBia 23001, which has kanamycin resistant. And then this was mobilized into Agrobacterium strain LBA 4404. And next, please. We have developed quite a few tomato transmitters. Next slide. Yeah. We developed quite a few transmitters, and then we have done PSA screening for showing the presence of transgene. Southern was also done for checking the transgene copy number. And next, we have also checked the expression of siRNA molecules by an important technique called stem loop RT-PCR, which is the modification of RT-PCR. And then we advanced to next generation. Next slide, please. We advanced to next generation, the T1 generation, and then T1 progeny was screened for presence of transgene or transgene integration by PCR, and we found the 4 lines, right? We consider 4 lines for insect bioassays. Next, please. Yeah. So, like I've already discussed, the siRNA-mediated approach for insect control, Helicoverpa control, and here also we have considered similar parameters like insect mortality, effect on growth and development of the insect larvae. And we found, like initially we have checked the target gene transcripts, and interestingly, there were about 90% decrease in the transcripts of the target gene, that is ecdosine receptor, which in turn caused several effects on insect growth and development, that is decrease in larval weight and length, effect on pupil weight, morphology, and even adults, abnormal adults were also detected. Next, please. Very importantly, there are 4 genes which are downstream to ecdosine receptor, which also got downregulated as a result of the suppression of ecdosine receptor gene. So So this was published in a very important journal, Insect Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, which has a very good impact factor. And then artificial microRNA approach was very successfully used for development of tomato resistant to an important viral infection, that is a tomato leaf curl virus infection, which is very, very common. And we have come up with some lines of tomato where we knock down the expression of RNA suppressor protein genes, AC2, AC4. They have shown almost immunity, against the viral infection. And this work was done, actually, I was a collaborator with Dr. Sri Mukherjee, who retired from ICGB. And this work was done, transmission work was done in my lab. So, next, please. I'm almost through. Yeah. Finally, I would like to conclude that RNA approach, including artificial microRNA approach, has several advantages as compared to the conventional transgenic approach, where we mostly overexpress the transgene. First of all, the RNAi is a highly sequence-specific gene silencing, and which is mediated by double-strand RNA. Then you can also knock down more than one gene using chimeric RNA construct. Chimeric RNA constructs can harbor sequences of more than one gene, right? And in some cases, gene knockdown can be up to 90 to 95%, which is almost equivalent to gene knockdown. Sorry, gene knockout. More importantly, the host plant machinery, protein machinery is not at all involved here, right? Since the silencing is occurring at post-transcription level, right, host protein machinery is not at all involved. So there is no protein, virtually there is no protein. So in the absence of a transient protein, we have a couple of advantages. It is very unlikely that the target pathogen or pest would gain resistance against RNAi in the absence of protein, right? There are some possibilities, but for example, insect or pathogen can undergo mutation in genes which are involved in their RNA pathway, but that can be detrimental. That can be detrimental for pathogen or insect itself. So it is very unlikely that the target pathogen insect would gain resistance against RNAi. And again, in the absence of transient protein, there might be minimal biosafety issues. As mentioned before, this approach has only one limitation: off-target effects, silencing of unintended genes, right? And that can be overcome right in the beginning when you're preparing hairpin constructs. You have to do a thorough in silico analysis to select a sequence which is free from off-target effects. And of course, we have demonstrated that fungal ODC gene and many other. We also worked out on many other target genes in fungi for the effective control of Fusarium wilt. And RNA was also successfully used for the control of Helicobacter pylori by both siRNA mediated and artificial microRNA mediated approach. I strongly believe that RNA approach, including artificial microRNA approach, would complement the existing crop protection strategies for effective control of pathogens and pests. And of course, at present, of course, there's a increasing spate of interest in the use of double-strand RNA as a spray for the control of pathogen pests. Only time will decide whether this will be a very viable approach or whether this will have any kind of effect on the environment or other organisms. Next, please. I would say RNA is a blue moon of biotechnology or technology for the 21st century. I don't know whether all of you know about blue moon, right? We have only full moon once in a month, but very, very rarely, we get 2 full moons in a month called blue moon. So RNA is something like blue moon of biotechnology. And of course, the technology for 21st century for taking care of many important problems in agriculture and other disciplines. Next, please. Yeah. Of course, all other speakers are talking about CRISPR-Cas system for gene editing, for crop improvement, or for control of human diseases like Alzheimer's or other diseases. Like, as you know, the CRISPR-Cas loci, right, is present in bacteria, archaebacteria, including archaebacteria, which is an innate immunity mechanism, against invaded nucleic acids. And this system has been modified by quite a few scientists. Of course, the head of the department, he had already mentioned that 2 people have got Nobel Prize. Unfortunately, they have neglected, of course, a couple of other scientists who have contributed very, very significantly. Same thing happened in RNAi. RNA, Dr. Balakambe, Vector Ambrose, they have done pioneering work. Their two names were not considered, along with Andrew Fire and Craig Mello. There was a lot of criticism. Anyway, so the CRISPR-Cas system, it has undergone many, many modifications. Like the initial CRISPR-Cas9 system, it is very effective for deletion or adding a DNA copy, but there are off-target effects, right? So now recently, the CRISPR-Cas system has modified such that off-target effects are minimal or no off-target effects, right? I think it's a CRISPR-Cas12, I think, or some other. So next, please. I've already mentioned that the CRISPR-Cas system can be used either for deleting a DNA fragment, or you can copy DNA, you can copy and paste, very precisely. You can do this at a particular site in the genome, very precisely. So this has, of course, uh, n number of or numerous number of potential applications in crop improvement program and in medical field and other speakers. Anyway, they will be talking about the details of this gene editing tool or genome engineering tool for various applications. Next, please. Yeah, I would like current. We just finished a project on transgenic approach for yield improvement in black rice of from Northeast. I was the coordinator of this network project. And right now, I have only one project, that is CRISPR-Cas for targeting essential genes of papaya leaf spot virus for virus resistance. And I would like to thank my research team for their active participation in different RNA programs in the lab. Next, please. I would like to acknowledge the funding agencies like for DBT. I had more than a dozen projects in RNA from DBT. I have handled, of course, 27 or 28 major projects so far. And I would like to thank DST, DBT, and private companies like Biju Sheetal, Sri Biotech Laboratory from Hyderabad. And I would like to thank my collaborators like Dr. Sunil Mukherjee, who was involved in control of fungal pathogen by RNAi, and Dr. Chakravarti, the virus resistance in tomato, along with Dr. Sunil Mukherjee, and Dr. G.P. Gupta, who initially helped in insect resistance in Helicobacter by RNA approach. Dr. Paul, of course, has helped in some other, delay of ripening by RNA approach. Thank you all for your patience, and I would like to take up the questions if you have any or queries. I've exceeded by 10-15 minutes, I believe. I think that should be okay. Yeah.
No, sir, you're not exceeded. In fact, I should say we were not able to even gauge time listening such an informative presentation. So it was so engaging.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, dear participants, so if you have any questions, if you have any queries, or if you're already working in this area, sir, since we have most of the participants who are faculty members in different colleges and universities, so
that's right.
we can discuss it here, or you can write your questions in the text box. You can raise your hands and I can unmute you if you have any questions. Okay, seems people are so mesmerized, they are still absorbing a lot of information about RNA interference. The way you talked, it was very impressive. The way you took us to a journey, starting from discovery and learning about the mechanism of RNA mediated silencing, how to identify target genes, and different applications of RNA interference mediated gene silencing. That includes one of the fascinating thing, that is getting a blue rose, which is a rare species. Also, host-induced genome silencing and using this mechanism in different plants and different varieties of crops to attain better properties is something very new that I myself have also learned from this session. Thank you so much, sir. A lot of gratitude, a lot of respect for doing this much work for the country, for all of us. Thanks a lot from my side and from all the participants.
Thank you, Dr. Meghana, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. So there is one question
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I
from
could see that.
Dr. Nanda. So
Yeah,
he says that double-stranded RNA pest control is emerging, but how would
yeah,
you address the effects of double-stranded RNA on the non-target organisms in your research?
yeah. That's a very interesting question. I've also pointed out this, when I talked about the double-strand RNA spray. See, when you design double-strand RNA, you should take into consideration that double-strand RNA has a very minimal homology with all the genes available in the database, from beneficial organisms. Right? Just a second. So that is, that can be done by in silico analysis using bioinformatic tools. So this is something very, very important to avoid any non-target effects. Yeah.
Okay. So any other question, audiences? Okay. So our head of department, Professor Paul, wants to ask something.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So you can unmute yourself.
Sure. Me?
So Professor, no, Professor Paul, I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So please go ahead. Okay, might be some network issue. Sir, if you want, Professor Paul, you can write your question in the message box.
I think probably there's a network problem. We
Yes,
can't hear
sir.
you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, no problem, sir. I'll come back to you with the
Because,
question.
because you are
So
losing time. Otherwise, you
anybody
are
else?
losing time.
Yes, sir. So anybody else, if there is any question, any query? Okay, sir.
Yeah.
I think so
I
we
look
all,
forward to listen to. I
yes,
also
sir.
look forward to. Yeah, now he has asked something now.
Yes.
HOD. Do double strand RNA has? Can you read the question now?
Yeah, sir. So Professor Paul is asking, do double-stranded RNA has any impact on leaf surface colonizers?
Yeah, it can have if it has homology again with the leaf colonizers, like microbes, for example. So that is the only main concern. So one has to avoid sequence similarity. If the double strand RNA which is sprayed onto the leaves, if it has a sequence similarity with the sequence of the microbes present on the surface of the leaf, their growth is also affected. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we know we have to be very careful. There's a lot of excitement about double strand RNA spray, or spray invisible RNA interference, but only the time will tell. Whether it's going to be very safe technology, right, or whether it will have some impact on the negative impact on the environment or beneficial organism. So that has to be still worked out. Yeah.
Great. Great. So I
Thank,
think thank you, sir, for answering all the questions. So with this,
thank you.
we will end the session
Yeah.
and we'll resume back at 2 p.m. again with Professor Jitendra Giri's lecture on the
Yeah.
same area of CRISPR-Cas.
Is it 12 o'clock
Yes,
now?
yes, sir. So it is the time is 12 o'clock right now. So we'll resume
Ah,
again at 2 p.m., sir.
that's at 2 p.m. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Yes, sir.
Giri,
So
of course, I
I'll
know.
remind
No?
you, sir. I'll remind you. So if
Uh,
you want to,
I'll be there. Yeah.
okay,
I'll try
thank
to
you so
attend some
much.
lectures. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. So please join using the same link, and I'll send a reminder to all of you. So, Professor Chakrabarti, you want to ask something?
No, actually, I thought it was for attendance.
Oh, no, 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 sir. Attendance, I'll be sharing a Google form link in the chat box in the after the end of second session.
Okay,
So that time, all the participants they can add their attendance.
okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.